Morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar for today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sivanya Pillay, and I'm just going to get started. So today's webinar is based on smarter design visualization with Revit and Twinmotion. So just a bit of an introduction to myself. So I'm a BIM specialist in the AEC built environment for Baker Bains, and I work specifically with certain softwares. I've got a BTech in architectural technology with 7 years of architectural industry experience. And at Baker Bains, I'm involved in training and education, as well as consulting in the software that I specialize in. So just a bit about solutions that we have at Baker Bains. We focus mainly in 3 areas: consulting, software and hardware, and education. And in those 3 areas, they are further broken down into education, things like classroom and virtual training, private and customized training, or self-paced learning. As well as for consulting, we've got people, process, and business assessments, BIM consulting, data management, CAD, CAM, and simulation. And for software and hardware, we are an Autodesk Gold partner, a Leica partner, as well as a Clear Edge partner. And you see the partner brands right there. Of our solutions, we function mainly in these sectors, so the building, civil, energy, process, plant, and manufacturing sectors. Just to continue, just to give you a little bit of an agenda for today, we will start off with an introduction, look at what is Twinmotion, the desired outcomes in design visualization, the visualization capabilities in Revit, as well as moving on to Revit and Twinmotion integration, how to actually access it, preparing your Revit model for taking it into Twinmotion, and then the actual workflow from Revit to Twinmotion. And then we'll look at the main part of the webinar for today, which is the Twinmotion capabilities demonstration. We will look at external capabilities and adding in things like elements, materials, textures, and then we'll look a little bit at internal, or rather interior capabilities of Twinmotion and how that looks. Then lastly, we'll move on to frequently asked questions, and then just to closing, look at various parts of that. So moving on to what is Twinmotion. So Twinmotion, it empowers you to create high-quality real-time visualizations for architecture, consumer products, and transportation, fashion, and more. And this doesn't mean, so it's not specific to one sector in the built environment, for example. It's, it can be applied to things like fashion, which I think is quite an interesting tool. It is now accessible to all full Revit license holders, so it is not accessible, unfortunately, to Revit LT license holders. So just keep that in mind. And then when it comes to the versioning, Twinmotion 2022.2.3 is compatible with Revit 2023 and will need a DataSmith exporter. And this is included in the download. It's just included as a separate file. Whereas Twinmotion 2023, which is now compatible with Revit 2024, has a built-in one. So when you download the install file, it's just one file that you would install and everything else is done for you. Features, when it comes to Twinmotion, we've got real-time visualization using the raster mode. And then when you want to look at full rendering capabilities, that would be utilized using the path tracer mode. In Twinmotion, you can also create orthographic views to render, not just perspective. So for example, if you're using other software like Photoshop, for example, to create 2D rendered views of your projects for presentations, etc., you can actually do that in Twinmotion, which I think is quite useful also because it's directly plugged into Revit, so that gives you quite a seamless transition. And then you've got an extensive material library and object library, and this doesn't require you to at least add any external elements, so you can make good use of the library that's already provided to you. Then when we come to outcomes in design visualization, so when we look at these things, when you take into account projects and what we would want, what outcome we would want when it comes to design visualization and the capabilities that we have, we would want good stakeholder buy-in. So obviously thinking about the communication devices, the visual communication that Twinmotion would offer, this would lead to effective stakeholder and community engagement. So people would have a better understanding of what you're trying to convey to them, so they would obviously be more interested in the project. We also have an improved win rate. Utilizing these softwares would give you an improved win rate. It would allow you to have more impactful presentations and high quality work in a short time frame. And you'll see why I say that is because the software is extremely versatile, it's very user friendly, and it's very easy to use. When it comes to improve satisfaction, you would be able to meet your client's needs and expectations utilizing this software. It gives you a little bit more of an extensive access to the library and things like that. That would allow you to convey your design a little bit better. And then you've got the opportunity to get more work, not just from additional clients who would obviously see your portfolio. You would also get, there's also the opportunity to get more work from the same clients who've already worked with you. And then you've got visualization as a service, and architects are always needing new ways to convey a design to clients, to other stakeholders. Twinmotion obviously gives you a much better understanding of that. It allows the client to have a better design understanding as well. And then when we look at the visualization capabilities in Revit, because obviously you're going to need to utilize as much of Revit before taking it into Twinmotion, and Revit does have a lot of capabilities that you can utilize prior to getting into Twinmotion. So first off, we've got ideation. So right at the beginning of the project, you can utilize things like conceptual massing, so utilizing different models that you can model in place in Revit, so utilizing that to convey your design. You can also make use of design options, so that allows you to have multiple designs in one project file. You've got generative design that allows you to generate different design outcomes and outputs based on certain inputs that you provide. So if I give an example, a bubble diagram to figure out a layout, or even just space planning for an office, for example. Then you've got things like phasing. So you would utilize the phasing tool in Revit, and this would allow you to change the graphics of different phases, to display them differently visually. And this allows the other stakeholders in the project to have a good understanding of the phasing, and also it gives them a good understanding of the scope of works for the project as well. Then we look at design review. So when it comes to that, we've got visual styles, different visual styles that you can look at your views in, and also perspectives and orthographic views. And this may seem like it should come with it, and obviously it does, but it is something that is quite important to have in software so that you can convey the correct message. And then you've got fly-through and walk-through animations as well. Second to last is simulation. So you've got solar studies that you can utilize, illuminance simulation, as well as lighting and solar analysis for all of your natural elements, and utilizing and looking at the context that your project is within. And then lastly, looking at photoreal representation, real-time realistic views, ray tracing and rendering, cloud rendering, as well as VR and Twinmotion. How to access your Revit, or how to access Twinmotion for Revit. So in your Autodesk account, you can access it under your products and services. Click on access, and it won't take you to a further Autodesk page. It will take you to Twinmotion, a Twinmotion page, and it will give you two options. So like I mentioned, the two versions, and you can just click on download, and it will literally just start downloading. You can let it download. It is quite a large file, but once it downloads, you can open up the file and then just install it and follow the prompts. So it's quite a simple process. Then looking at the integration and looking at setting up or preparing your Revit model for Twinmotion. So cleaning up your model prior to exporting it into Twinmotion. So the reason why we do this is we don't need certain elements like the electrical equipment, fire alarm devices, furniture as well, and lighting, etc. So it would make the file extremely heavy once you take it into Twinmotion. And we don't want that, because we're looking at more of an external view. So a lot of the internal things we don't necessarily need, because we're not going to actually see that. Clean up the file before you take it into Twinmotion. And I mean, you can leave it, but it is going to cause quite it's going to demand a lot more from your graphics card. And Twinmotion does require quite a good graphics card. So then you can actually go into follow the prompts and open the model in Twinmotion, and it's quite an easy process. From your view tab, just click on open in Twinmotion under the Twinmotion icon, and it takes a couple of seconds to load, and then you're faced with a few options. So existing project or new project. In this instance, we will do a new project, and then the collapse tool, you would choose collapse by material. The reason we do that is because it would condense the materials that are common from Revit into Twinmotion. So all the elements that have the same materials, once it's been taken into Twinmotion, it collapses it into one object. And this allows for faster processing. And so once it's done and taken into Twinmotion, that is what it looks like. Okay, and then getting into the main part of the presentation, so the Twinmotion demonstration, so looking at the capabilities and how you would populate it with different things. So once you've taken it into Twinmotion, once you've taken your model in, you can navigate around, you can change the time of day to have a look at your shadows, and you'll see in the background, it does give you a little bit of context, so it gives you a little bit of a cityscape at the background, and this is automatic in Twinmotion, which is quite useful. You can then come in and start adding in things like landscaping, and you can just choose one of the two options. It will load it, just populate your model with a landscape around your site. And then what you can do is match the grass in Twinmotion and change the one that has been imported in Revit, just so the textures match and they don't look too different. Then you can actually start sculpting your landscape or your terrain, which is a very, very quick and seamless tool. You can see that we changed the diameter for how big our sculpting tool is. And this allows you to quickly and we don't have to do it very accurately at this point. We're just doing it for the presentation. You can lift up the landscaping that we placed just like we did now, just so that there's a little bit more accuracy. We can change the diameter to a smaller one so that we can be a little bit more detailed in what we are adding in. And then once you are happy with what you've added in, you can always come in and you can start subtracting. So you can start flattening certain areas around your site. And you can do this pretty quickly. You can flatten lots of areas or quite a large area around your site. And this is so that we can start adding in some vegetation afterwards. And then from here, we can start going and adding in some vegetation. So from your library to the left, you can just choose a tree and add in the vegetation. It's simple drag and drop process. You can just drag it and drop it wherever you want, and it still gives you further options below. So the dock that you see at the bottom, it's quite blank, but once you click on something, it does give you quite a few options. So things like age, height, growth, leaf tint, bark tint. So you can adjust what you want. You can adjust the age. So obviously the tree will grow or it'll stay quite small, depending on what you'd like. Then you can do a multi-select. So you can multi-select things in your library or trees in your library. And as you start dragging and dropping or placing, you'll see that it randomizes the selection, which is quite a useful tool. That doesn't mean that you have to constantly go and choose one. You just have to make a multi-selection and place them, and it will randomize what it places for you. Different tool is that you can paint vegetation. So just like we sculpted the landscaping, we can also paint some vegetation on as well, which is a very useful tool to me. I think it's a very quick and seamless process that allows you to very quickly populate your site. You can adjust your diameter so that you can paint very quickly around your site. Also is very smooth and user-friendly, so it doesn't take a lot for you to learn it. There are learning resources, which I will show you a bit later, but at least for now, you'll see that it is quite easy to use. The tools are easy to find, the library is easy to navigate, and you can come in and adjust things like the navigation, like the age of the trees. So if you want to adjust specific ones in terms of that, you can. And then once you've added that in, if you drag and drop maybe a bush into the option or the group of trees that you added in, you'll see that it's automatically populated in your forest that you've created. So that I think is quite cool. You don't have to then come and add in something afterwards. And obviously the vice versa works. So if you go and remove something, it will remove it. So what we did was we just turned the path tracer on just to show what it looks like. But before we do that, we can first create an image. So in your media options, you can create an image, and this is your one type of rendering, which is your raster mode. So you can create an image, and that's a real-time sort of render. And that's just as and when you're working, it does show you a real-time render with your raster mode. And if you want to utilize the full rendering capabilities, so you can utilize a path tracer. So that is the button that we're toggling on here. You can change the quality of it, so from low, medium to high, and you can adjust that accordingly. For certain images, you can also geolocate your project. So you can search for the location of your project and you can set it to where it is. It doesn't have to be completely accurate. If it's in the main area, then that's also fine. You can just see exactly what properties that would give you as well. So you could do time of month, time of day, month, north offset, etc. And you can adjust the time of day just to see exactly in that location what sort of how the vegetation and how the surroundings affect it, and how the natural elements affect your site as well. And then if you do have specific things in Revit that you still want to switch off, you can go into your Revit settings and you can switch off certain things. Like we switched off the lights here from Revit. I think it imported certain things from Revit, so we can do that just so that we can populate them rather in Twinmotion. And you can add more trees. You can come back in later and do that as well. So from here, you can also adjust your focal length. You can adjust the images. You can switch your path tracer off. So we can go back into raster mode. That will allow us to zoom in to a smaller portion of the site so that we can start adding in a few more things. So we switched our path tracer back on, and you'll see that it is quite grainy, and that is because the path tracer is on. So as you move around, it's going to continuously try to process it, and you'll see that little circle continuously try to load. That's going to continuously try to render. And so obviously, if you're going to work in raster mode to start populating the materials, then rather switch your path tracer off. Okay, so you can adjust your time of day to have a look at your shadows, and so you can start working quite nicely in your model so that you can start populating it with vegetation, cars, people, textures, etc., which is what we're going to do now. So we're zooming into some of the apartments, and obviously remember we've got common materials that were imported from Revit. They've collapsed them into one object, so when you populate one, the common ones like that change as well. So we've just started adding in some textures. So you can go in and start adding in glass to your windows, and then we can start adding in wood to our doors. So we can choose the type of wood. You'll see that there's quite an extensive library. I think there's something like 700 textures in the library or materials in the library. So that's quite an extensive library. And you can see you just drag and drop and it paints the texture, and you can zoom in to paint more detailed things like frames. You can also adjust the orientation, the scale of it. We see that the orientation looks a little bit weird, so we adjusted it to 90 degrees to look a little bit more natural. Then we can come in and also populate, or rather paint a texture onto those screens, and you'll see that the rest of them also applied. So also we adjusted the orientation of that as well, so that that also shows correctly. Then we can start adding in other textures. So we can go in and start adding in things like the texture for the road. So we just need to go in and find the texture for the road. But first, actually, we're going to do some vegetation. We can start adding in some ivy vegetation onto the screens just to make it look a little bit better. So you can see that you can just drag and drop similar to the other workflow of the previous trees. And you can also paint these. If you select one of these, you can come in and paint them. So I'm just going to select one of the ivy, change the diameter to a smaller diameter for a little bit more detailed. And then you can see you can literally just paint over the screen, and it's quite a seamless process. And we're obviously not doing this very accurately, but when you're doing it for an actual presentation, you can be a little bit more accurate. So just for the sake of the presentation, we're just going to quickly change it. We change the diameter, and we're going to quickly paint roughly all of the ivy along these screens. So just do that one, and then the last one. And then I think we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so from there, you can also go in and add additional vegetation. So we can start adding in some bushes. We can adjust the scale of it or the size of it so that it doesn't hide the rest of our project too much. It sits nicely in front of the houses. You can continue to add those in and change the sizes as well. Then we can come in and adjust the texture of our road. So we can change the scale of it, and you'll see that it does have quite a nice texture to it. And from here, we can actually come and adjust the time of day to look at the shadows and how it affects the different materials and elements that we've added in. Then we can adjust something like the grunge, and that gives a bit of a randomness to the texture, so to the road. So it gives a little bit more of a natural texture rather than something that's just very, very constant and doesn't look very realistic. Okay, from there, you can add in cars into your model. And you can change the color of the cars, which is quite useful. So you can change it to whatever color that's available in the library, and then we can come in and add in one more car here. Okay, so we place the car, and then we can just change the color of it. Okay, so once you've added that in, then you can continue, and you're happy with, and once you're happy with the amount of cars you placed, you can start adding in people. You've got animated humans, which is quite useful. So you've got an animated character and you've got various options in the dock below. So you've got different color presets for their clothes. You've also got different poses. So you've got speaking, you've got sitting, lying, dancing. And then if you click on dancing, it does give you additional options. So it gives you different types of dances that he would do, which I think is quite cool. But for now, I think for the presentation, we'll just keep him on speaking. We can rotate him, and then we can place somebody else and rotate her so that, and we can keep on idle so that she just looks like she is listening to him. So we can pause, we can just position them so that they're facing each other. Then you can also add in groups of people, still in the animated characters, you can add in groups of people. And what is very cool about this tool is that it randomizes the people in that group. So it's not going to place the same amount or the same group of people. So you'll see that each group of 3 people is different. So it randomizes that, and that's one of the asset tools that Twinmotion includes. Okay, so once you've added that in, then we can come and add in some static, so posed humans. So these are actually 3D scanned people. So it gives quite a good accuracy to it, but it is just a static image. It does give a good quality to the image though. So these are just static people that you can add in as well. So obviously you've got the static ones, and then if you're doing something like a fly through, you will make use and see the animated ones properly. If you're doing a still render, you're obviously not going to see the animated characters. Then you can switch on your path tracer to have a look at how your progress is going. So you can have a look at exactly what it's going to look like. You can change the position of your camera, and then once you've done that, you can come into your image and refresh that. So it changes that position for your image that you've created. And you can switch on the path tracer again, and we'll just let it load for a second or two. And then it gives you quite a nice image of what this looks like. And this is on low. So this is on a low quality because it went quite quickly. Obviously, if you do a high quality render, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's definitely going to give you a high quality image. Then we can come back and zoom out into to look at our entire site. So before we do that, before I show you the full images, I want to just continue and show you additional tools that we've got. So you've got different kinds of parts in Twinmotion. So you've got character parts, vehicle parts, custom parts, and then I think you've also got a bicycle part. So for here, we're just adding in a character part, and you will see what happens once we're done is that it populates automatically. It will populate automatically with characters walking along that path. So, excuse me, you don't have to add in the characters after you've done the path. It will automatically populate for you. And then you can come in and just move anything, any elements, any other people or cars that are in the way of that path so that there's nothing obstructing that way. And then we can add in a vehicle part, so it works the same way. So you draw the path using the spline tool that's provided along the path that you'd like the vehicles to drive, and you'll see that it does populate automatically with the cars. Once you're done, you can just click anywhere and it will start. It will add vehicles on the path. And obviously, the direction that the vehicles are driving is the direction in which you drew the path. So that's something just to note. Okay, so these are just images that I'm showing you just after a couple of hours of working on it and perfecting the model. So adding a little bit more textures, more vegetation, more context around the site. You'll see that it is quite detailed, and these are just, obviously these are all just loading because you've got the path tracer on. So each time, so you'll see it's a little bit, starts off a little bit noisy and then it clears, just like we all know a render would do. Okay, so we're just giving it a couple of seconds to load, and I will show you the full images now. There we go. So these are just the full rendered images in full screen. These are all the final renders in high quality mode. I think they're really good. So it's quite a useful, seamless, user-friendly tool. It's quite nice that they've also added it in Revit. So it's very accessible to all of us now as well. And then moving on to the interior capabilities. So this is just quickly looking at the different states that you've got. So you'll see that on Twinmotion on the bottom right, we've got different scene states. So it has imported the design options that we had in Revit. In Revit, we set up specific design options, and then when we took that into Revit, when we took it into Twinmotion, it imported it as different states. So as we toggle through each one, you'll see that it gives you different design options, different outlays. And then we can switch the path tracer on to have a look at how each one of those looks or how it renders. Okay, we can switch it off so that we can come in to raster mode and we can look at the images that we did create. So we can cycle through the different images that we've got. And I think these are all set to high quality. So we just need to come in and change it to low. So we just need to select one of the states that we would like to view. And you can see that it starts refreshing each one because you are in the path tracer. You can select one of the views and you'll see that it starts loading, but it is quite slow. So like I said, it's on high, so we can switch them all to low and you'll see that it does load pretty quickly. So that's the finished low quality render. And you can go into the other images as well and switch those over to low as well, so you can see what those look like. And these are all different views of different design options. So what's nice is that even in your raster mode or even your low quality mode, you can sit with your client and you can convey your design intent to them quite nicely. Okay, so from here we can change our camera view, so we can pan around and orbit around and change our focal point and look at a different point of view in our apartment. And we can use the path tracer and see what this would look like as well. This is obviously set to a higher render, so we can change it. We can adjust the exposure as well so that it's a bit brighter. We can change the quality to low to see what that looks like. And it does look a little bit fuzzy, if I can say. So you can change it to medium and just see what that looks like. And you will see that as soon as it loads, it does look a little bit better. Okay, so that already you can see the change in quality for just a medium render. And that's basically just a final render and in different design options for these different apartment options or different apartment layouts. Okay, and then just moving on to some frequently asked questions. So a lot of the time, like because the software is relatively new in terms of it being available to Revit, a lot of people have these questions, you know, like how do I access it? What if this? What if that kind of thing? How does getting Twinmotion for Revit affect my Autodesk subscription? And does this offering come at an additional cost? And the answer is no. There's no additional cost. Twinmotion for Revit is included with your subscription to the single user, multi-user, standalone version of Revit. The AC collection as well, flex or enterprise agreements. So if you've got a standalone version of Revit, it's available, AC collection is available, and others as well. And unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, the offering is not available to Revit LT users. And then the other question is, I have or have paid for Twinmotion. How does Twinmotion for Revit affect me? The answer is, if you already have an existing commercial version of Twinmotion, you don't need to do anything. That license will still be available to you. Are there specific learning resources for Twinmotion for Revit workflows? Like I said, it's quite a useful tool. It's very easy to learn, but if you do want helpful resources, then there are links on the Twinmotion learning resources site. And then a very important one, because I actually had a bit of a struggle with this. So how can I use the Open in Twinmotion feature in Revit if I already have Twinmotion 2022.2 or 0.3 or later installed? The issue that I had was I went to try and open in Twinmotion and the button was grayed out. It wouldn't allow me to open, and the solution is that you need to make sure that you have the latest Revit update installed, so 2023.1 or higher. Something that is also very important, what are the system requirements for Twinmotion? The minimum requirements is a 6 GB graphics card, 16 gigs of RAM, Windows 10 or 11, definitely a 64-bit operating system, and 30 gigs of hard drive space. So the download file doesn't matter, but when you're actually installing, obviously the download file is quite large. It's between like 15 to 17 point something gigs. But the actual space that your hard drive will need when it's installing is 30 gigs, so that's important to keep in mind. And then the high-end requirements, so there's quite a jump between the two in terms of the graphics card and the RAM. So the graphics card needs 12 gigs, and the RAM has to be 64 gigs. So when I say minimum requirements and high-end requirements, these are minimum requirements would be for small projects, things like residential projects or just small-scale projects that you would have. And then high-end requirements would obviously be large scale, similar to the one that you saw me demonstrating. And then if you want more information on it, you've got a more detailed breakdown on the Twinmotion help website. So there's an article for Twinmotion system requirements. Then just looking at today's key takeaways, something that we all know now is that Twinmotion is very accessible. So now you all have access to whoever has access to Revit. The full Revit means that you have full access to Twinmotion as well. The compatibility between Twinmotion and Revit is something important. So like I mentioned with the versioning, Twinmotion 2022 is compatible with Revit 2023, and Twinmotion 2023 is compatible with Revit 2024. So the graphics card requirements, that is specific to the path tracer capability. So if you want to utilize just the raster image, the raster mode capability of Twinmotion, then your graphics card doesn't need to be too high end. It's user-friendly and very easy to learn. All the tools in the software are very easy to locate, and it's very easy to navigate the software. And then the workflows between Revit and Twinmotion, we saw that it's quite a seamless process. It's very, from within Revit, you don't have to open up any other programs. You can just clean up your Revit file and then click on the View tab and open it Twinmotion. Okay, and then I'm just going to get into how can we help you. In terms of getting started, we've got an option to upskill your team members. So upskill yourself, your team members in understanding and applying the basics and fundamentals. So if you're starting from base points, so starting from zero, and you want to get started with specific software, we are a Autodesk Authorized Training Center, so we can assist you. And then we also have an option to explore additional workflows. So let's say you already have the basic knowledge. So we would like to get you and your teams up to speed with the best practices and advanced workflows. So in that, we offer the Baker Bain Specialist Series training. That is more advanced workflows, more advanced tools, and more advanced training. Project-based options. So when you look at things like projects, a lot of the time people have specific requirements. So somebody would like to join a project, but there is a specific requirement in terms of applying BIM technologies on a specific project. So we can assist you in terms of BIM consulting and implementation to get you guys going in the project that you are busy with. So we do offer that as one of our options as well. So just our website is bakerbains.com. And then just also what we mentioned was tools.bakerbains.com. So that's our transformation tools website, where we have a lot of content in terms of guides, ebooks, and also our webinars do go on there. And then you'll see that we also have an online presence on other social media pages, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And that's it. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and your weekend, and we'll see you next time.